Okay, so just stand for a moment, and before we go into the actual exercises, just stand comfortably, not in any particular posture or whatever for the moment. Take a couple of slow, gentle breaths and just deliberately sort of, in a way, bundle up your current thoughts, whatever's sort of on your mind, and just gently move them to somewhere in your mind. A bit like if you were going to tidy up a room, you might sort of sort out some books and then move the books to the edge of the room to sort out the books later. It's not your priority at the moment. So you start to just feel that there's a sense of space in your thoughts, and this is where we start to focus our attention into our body a bit more fully. We can start to think about posture, how we're standing. A key element in Tai Chi is to find a way to just exist, really, but to stand in particular with these exercises and to move while staying in line with the pull of gravity. So rather than straining and always in this struggle with this overwhelming force, just allowing it through our body, allowing it free passage, and at the same time, it becomes useful. You can let gravity pull your hips down a little bit. This is exaggerated, but it's this sense of sitting. You can let gravity pull your center of gravity down. These are all things that will help to correct your posture and to make you more stable and to enable the movement as we start to begin. So that initial sort of attempt to just move your thoughts to one side opens up the potential for doing all of this. The thoughts will undoubtedly keep crowding back in, but you soon get into the habit of, it's just like, no, I don't want to think about that right now. I'm going to return my attention to my feet or whatever movement I'm doing or whatever. So now bringing your attention to the center part of your body between pelvis and waist, and just turning there, letting your arms follow your shoulders follow that turning in your center. There's a nice steady rhythm build. And again, just let an awareness of the changes in your body from one movement to another, from one stage of one movement to another. Occupy that space. So in the first instance, it's just a recognition. As I turn to one side, I feel an extension on one side, and then that contracts and so on. And there's all sorts of things going on in your body right now that can hold your attention, can anchor your attention. And then gradually we bring a little bit of discrimination to this. Is it useful to have that sense of extension? How do I respond to that? Is my weight helping me? And am I falling over? Have I got the feeling of gravity working through my body? Is my head resting gently on my shoulders? So as you get more familiar with the whole of the art, you'll recognize certain key principles that we keep coming back to, and plenty of other elements that after a while we think, oh, actually, I don't want to do it like that. I maybe want to do it like this or something like that. So this is part of the ongoing progression in these arts. It's not just about doing more and more difficult movements or more complicated movements, fancy ideas. All of that can be part of the progression, but just focusing on that area where mind and body interact with each other, and developing our ability to do that is one of the key qualities that we build in Tai Chi. It's also one of the key benefits. In Chinese medicine, it's said that our energy will follow our thinking, and our body will follow our energy. So if our thoughts are wayward, they're out there somewhere, that's sort of where we'll be going. Think in terms of these exercises, we could perhaps think of that being a little bit more interactive. So rather than thinking energy, body, and in a very linear sense, we can start to get a feel for how those three elements of body, mind, and energy. If you don't like the term energy, just use substitute momentum or movement or flow. It's fine. But those three elements mutually support each other. So I sometimes use the image of a tripod that you might put a camera or a telescope on. Each leg is important. Each leg supports and is supported by the other leg. And between them, they make a stable base for whatever you're putting on the tripod. We notice things. You may notice, for instance, there's a certain rhythm in the movement. And just like if you were in a club and they were playing a piece of music, everybody would move to the same rhythm. There's a resonance there. So if you think about what's happening within your body, if you're moving to the right rhythm in the center of your body, then the rest of your body will resonate to that. And this is one of the things that helps us to build a sense of what I would call connection. And again, one of the great outcomes, I think, and one of the great characteristics, one of the great benefits we get from this art is in this feeling of a whole of ourselves engaged with the movement. One of the old writings in Tai Chi uses the phrase that when one part of your body is in motion, your whole body is in motion. So your whole body is engaged, and so is the movement, so is your attention, as much as possible. And then just raising your arms a little bit, get them in a comfortable position, not too high. So all of these things contribute to the smoothness and the flow of the movement and a growing sense of well-being, I think. We often feel better after doing some of these exercises simply because we're more comfortable in our bodies, calmer in our minds. And it's these three jewels of body, mind, and energy coming together in the right way, supporting each other, that sort of leads us to that position. And then put one foot forwards, keep the width of your step. You can see the background between my legs. So if I stood like that, it would be sort of quite wobbly here. I've got a broader base to rest on, and transferring your weight forwards and backwards. So we're constantly reappraising our posture and the way that we're using our posture to encourage movement. And we begin to recognize when our posture goes out. So if, for instance, I'd taken a step forward and it was a bit narrow, it wouldn't feel right. I can feel the tension building up, and I would just make the adjustment. It's one of those things that actually, interestingly, brings our attention back. When we get something wrong, then we think, well, that doesn't feel right. So it makes us think about it. And a lot of these ideas really become part of the background to our movements. And then put your other foot forwards. When it gets to that point, it means that we start to carry that awareness with us into our daily lives. So this comes with time and with practice. And shake out. So as an example of how these three legs tripod interact, I maybe do this and it doesn't feel right, it feels awkward, the rhythm isn't there, the flow isn't there. So by recognizing, bringing my attention to the fact that this isn't right, it's almost like a wake-up call. I can then think, oh, hold on, my foot's in the wrong position, or my hips are stiffened up, or something like that. It's a very crude example, but it's a very important one. And in the process of doing that, I've also brought my attention back. So just for a moment, I start to get that sense of stillness and calmness. So the basic posture is your feet hip width apart, toes pointing forwards. They can be very slightly turned out if that's more comfortable for you, but not too far. Just know what you're doing. Your weight should be more towards the front of your feet. So here I can feel the pressure in the balls of my feet. If I go any further, that's going to happen. So I'm slightly precarious here, but again, I'm going to come closer. It's not all exaggerated, but there you can see I'm leaning forwards. What will happen is my body will try to correct this angle. And often what I'll do is this, and that's tightening my chest, it's bending my back, it's bringing my body out of line. What I want to try and do is to sit. I let my hips drop back as though I'm just resting my bottom on a wall. Just this sense of dropping down, softening the knees. And it should feel quite strong in the muscles of your thighs, maybe your calves as well. So your legs support your upper body. Your back supports the front of your body, so try not to pull your belly in, but hold your chest tight. And the feeling of that whole of the front of your body, including the rib cage, just dropping slightly. And when that happens, and it tends to be momentary, just realize that maybe your shoulders just drop. You don't just collapse on the ground. So we also feel the support of our skeleton, which gives shape to the soft tissue. And then let your hips drop back a little bit more and chin up. For anybody watching this who's fairly new to these arts, I always try and do the movements quite big so you can see what's going on. So you can see my hips are dropping down here. I want my hips to drop down rather than my knees to push forward, which will pull me over. But there's a limit to how far I can do that without straining in the knees themselves. So before that happens, I push up. In time, you'll be able to go down deeper because the muscles will condition. But you're just trying to get a sense of dropping down, gravity pulling you down, and then the response in your legs in particular is going to be to push you up. Imagine you're in water and somebody very gently pushes down on your head and you drop into the water, but straight away you start to feel the buoyancy coming from the water, and eventually the water will push you up. Bring your hands around as though you're cradling the ball, and let that movement move your arms forward, your body expanding, turning your hands over and contract. So a key element here is that feeling of the dropping of your center of gravity, what we call rooting down in Tai Chi. So the exercise is called rooting down. Our center of gravity low when we're rooted. As I said before, we're more stable. But we also have the source for the movement, just as the root of the plant provides some of the nutrients and the water and so on and so forth for the plant to grow with. So our root provides the basic impetus for the extending, contracting movements. with this one, keep your hands close to your body. They just rotate at the end of each stage. Palm up as you push up. Palm down as you sink down. Try and be as precise as you can with the movements, because that again helps with that clear focusing of our attention. Expanding, contracting. Again, a nice, steady, albeit now quite a slow rhythm. One that, again, we're looking for that sense of resonance with. Now, this time, turning your hands out, push up. This is called the wild goose. And it's a good example of how we might use images in Tai Chi as one of the ways in which we work with this area where mind and body meet, mind, body, and energy meet. If the image of the bird in flight carries the quality of smoothness, grace, fluidity, but also maybe of strength, then that may help you to develop those qualities in your movements. Our bodies naturally respond, of course, to images. So. And then hands crossing over. And the third development, and this is called parting the cloud. It's just very gentle, fluid, opening, expansive quality, and then back down. Hands stay in front of your body, and just be aware that there can be a tendency when our hands get above our shoulders to lean backwards. Try and avoid that. And at the top of the movement, you should feel as though you could have moved a little bit further. See, my elbows are quite bent. So move as far as you're comfortable moving, no further. And just recognize there can be all sorts of reasons why it might be uncomfortable to go any further. In time, you'll be able to work more creatively with those aspects. One more time. And then still expanding and contracting, but just on one side. Push your elbow out, let that draw your fingers up, wrap them around and pull down, as though you're plucking a leaf off a tree. Just dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Extending, yang, contracting, yin. With this one, you may notice that you're speeding up, and in particular, what can happen is, your hand gets 3/4 of the way down, and you're already starting to move on the other side. And just try and, again, when that happens, you'll notice your elbow is pulling your hand down. The hand descends. How does that feel in your sides and your shoulder? The hand comes down, and at the bottom, the fingers open. And only then do you transfer your attention to the other side. So we learn that as we start to lose that sense of calmness, or maybe even stillness, quietness in our minds, we can regain it by bringing our attention to the details of the movement. And again, this is a two-way process, because when we've got that quietness, that stillness in our attention, we may also notice details that we hadn't realized before. One more on each side. Now, start by bringing your hands to your sides, and then first movement, a gentle push up again, just a little bit above your head and slightly in front of your body. Back down to the starting position. Again, take your time with this. Lift again, but this time drop your elbows so your hands push out to the sides. And just a small turn in your hips, waist, and then back. And then on the other side, and back. And then facing forwards and pushing it. So 4 stages, we're pushing in 4 directions. There is, however, a 5th direction that we often overlook, which is the returning movement. So make sure you give yourself time and space. Bring your hands back to this starting position next to your hips. And once again, you may find that you're inclined to rush ahead a little bit. To get to here and go, oh, I've got to turn this way. Just remind yourself that you don't need to do that. We haven't got to rush with anything here. One of the very common images that we use in these arts is to move as though we're moving through water. It's an interesting image because when we move through water, we are actually using the bodies quite strong, and yet at the same time, everything has to soften up. So if you were to push out like this with your hands in water, and the joints of your fingers were stiff, you'd make much more resistance. So a strange combination of fluidity coming out of the softness of the body, but also something that's quite strong, because as our body softens and moves as though there is that resistance there, we engage more of the body. Again, when one part of your body is in motion, your whole body is in motion. So you're moving not just with the muscles of your upper body. You've got that feeling of sinking down and pushing up, this cycle of movement of energy through the body. And also, it's not just your arms or your hips, not just the bones and muscles, but again, your whole body, both in terms of its length, shall we call it, but also in its depth. This time, let your hands drop down, and next time you feel an expansion, let it push one arm out so it swings around. And you notice that my elbow is quite bent. and then down through the center line of your body, just tracing out a half circle. Try not to speed up on the descending stage of this. And if this is okay for you, if it's comfortable, you can add a stage when your hand gets above. To this point, you turn just a little bit again and just bring the hand down. Try not to pull your hand across your body. So the hand moves because I turn, not because I'm stretching out through my shoulder. Shoulder's already quite extended with this exercise. Good. Now try that on the other side, noticing any difference between one side of your body and another, which there quite often is, for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes it might just be because you slept on one side, that's a bit stiff there. Other times it might be much longer term habit. And once again, add in the turn. One more time. Now, go back to the wild goose. Just do a few rounds of this. Expanding, contracting. Side, you can see my hands go straight up and down. Well, one hand does. The wall's getting in the way of the other one. And then this time, be very careful with your knees and your back. As you reach the point where your hands are going to drop down, push your hips back. So shoulders, head and arms get swung forward. And then once again, letting your hips drop down, push up. This is called rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Using the angle of the pelvis and our hips going back to send head and shoulders forwards without straining in your back. And that's important. So we keep the stability of the movement by our hips going back. That was exaggerated, by the way. If I don't push my hips back, if I just lean forwards, I'm going to fall over, which I don't want to do. Do one more of these. And then, as you come up this time, hands coming in front of your hips and you turn horizontally, then you push your hips back to send the hands forwards, turn again and come back to the center. This is called polishing the table. So your arms, your hands, your upper body in general gets moved by the movements, horizontal and vertical, in the center of your body. So we're very much moving from our center. One more time. come back to the standing position and just turn again and just see if this feels any different. And the other thing you might want to draw your attention to is how you're doing with this feeling of just very gently encouraging your thoughts to sit back, so that all those details in our lives are just taking a back seat, and we're much more aware of this sense of movement, of energy in our body, the mechanics of the movement, the posture, and so on and so forth, the rhythm of the movement. Just letting your hands come down. Give your legs a little shake. It is undeniably strong on the legs, this. So it's important to recognize with Tai Chi that for all that the movements are very soft and very gentle, they're also very strong. And we often, I think, overlook just how important the physical conditioning is. We want any physical activity will condition your body in a particular way. If you're a swimmer, you'll have a slightly different body form to, say, somebody who plays football, somebody who cycles, or whatever. And so the requirements in Tai Chi are that our body are known to the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, the bones, the fascia, all develop in such a way that they can work together as one unit. It should be very natural for us, but quite often we've lost that. If you look at a cat or a dog, if you look at a lot of young children, they naturally move as one unit. So we're trying to kind of recapture that, I think. And again, this brings body, mind, and movement together into a whole, rather than that feeling that we get sometimes. And we say it to each other, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm kind of all over the place. I couldn't find my keys. I can't, blah, blah, blah. We all have days like that. These practices of Tai Chi can help to sort of draw us together, to defragment, if you like to think of it like that. Now, from this parallel position, take a slightly wider stance. You can have your feet turned out here. Now, transferring your weight from side to side. And notice that as I move, my body's staying in line. So I'm not just doing this, and I'm not doing this. I move my weight to 60% in this leg, 60-40, and then I move my weight into the left. And I go into my leg here, so on your right, and I turn to that direction. I push across and I turn. And when you turn, think of your spine and that central area of your back being like the axle of a wheel, or the pole that a weather vane is attached to. And so it's a very light movement turning around that central line. Hold your hands in front of you. Just let them follow the movement. The next exercise is a little bit more complicated. Just take it in easy stages if you don't know it. Come into your right leg, turn your right hand palm down, and this time as you go into the left and turn, let that movement just swing your left hand down. Come back, so you draw your hand across your chest. And at the end of the movement, you turn your hand's palm in. Then you move across to your left. Turn, and then go into your right, swinging the right arm out. Just drop the left hand, the top hand down until it's in front of your hip, and come back. This is called parting the wild horse's mane. A lovely image associated with this, the tireless fluid movements of the horse. Again, if that image of moving through water is a good one, that can help with the fluidity of the movement. Key elements here: your weight moving, your center turning, your arms will express the movement. So 4 stages. 1, I move the weight across and turn, and that positions my hand. 2, I simply come back, withdraw the hand across, and at the end, I turn them in to hold the ball. 3, I move my weight back, and 4, I turn. I'm ready to go again. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. And after a while, those stages may overlap a little bit, and certainly it's not a hard, rigid movement. It's a soft changeover from one stage to another. But you don't want to start mixing them up. You don't want to think, well, I've got to go, well, now I've got to come back, or I've got to turn the hands. So again, just trying to be clear with body and mind, not hurrying. And just remember, it's not the end of the world if you make a mistake. One more on each side. Okay, and shake. So part of the wild horse's mane is an adaptation from one of the movements that we find quite often in the various Tai Chi sequences. Normally we would do it with a particular stepping pattern, but there we did it what we call fixed step. A little bit more complex than some of the other exercises, and a little bit more of a requirement not to rush ahead. Remember when I was saying here, don't kind of like get into rushing and half doing the movements. So again, it encourages this sense of what you might call patience, I suppose. Waiting until you arrive at a certain point and only then moving into the next stage. So this is very much a moving meditation of trying to keep a sense of precision and alertness in this particular present moment. And it's very easy to find ourselves getting distracted. But as a meditation that encourages, it's a practice that encourages that sense of being here, then it's very good, because if you do lose the focus of your attention, you'll find, however long you've been doing this, that the movement will very quickly go wrong. Now we're going to change the stance. So keeping the width of your step, turn one foot out, and this is an angle that you can play about with, and step straight ahead with the other foot. Again, you can still see the background between my legs. And so you've maintained the width of your step, and you've stepped about the same distance. So it's relatively short. And once again, just beginning to transfer your weight. So this time, when you go forward, you get about 60% of your weight in the front leg again. When you go back, you may get a bit more, up to 70. And you just let your weight settle until you feel that little push back from the leg. So in the parallel stance, we were going up and down, if you remember. You go down and you feel the push up. Here, we feel the same push up, but we direct it through our center, forwards and backwards. And this is a major development from that up and down movement, downward with the pull of gravity and the yield into it, upward with that sense of movement of energy coming up to the ground and through our legs, to a horizontal movement. And that horizontal movement will be the one that moves our arms shortly. So this is an important exercise. It's a very good exercise for conditioning legs again. And if you have problems with ankles or knees or hips, then this can be a good exercise. Don't overdo it, but it will both help to condition your legs, but it would also help with that sense of the fluid movement, the sense of the energy flowing more freely through the affected area. Now move your weight into your back foot and then just draw the toes of your front foot up, and you'll feel that a bit more of your weight goes into the back foot. You can have the front foot slightly turned out. Just go forwards, settle into the front foot, push your back knee forwards, and feel that your hip drops and your heel comes off the ground, and more of your weight goes down through the front foot. You gradually get into a point where our weight is predominantly maybe 96% or whatever in the supporting leg, with just some of the weight of the empty leg left behind. Pelvis and hips remain level. Try not to lean forwards or backwards. In fact, if anything, there's a stronger sense of them sinking. And that helps again to retain our stability. And this time, just draw your foot in and then step out again. Put your heel down, lower your toes, and move your weight forwards. Push the knee forwards, bring your foot in, step back and out to the side to keep the width of the step. Lower your heel and then move your weight. So in fact, the leg contracts in, and to exaggerate, see how my foot traces out a part of a circle. Same thing here. Trying to keep hips and pelvis steady, allowing your center of gravity to drop. So if I were to try and do this, and say, for instance, I started straining in my shoulders, now I'm much more likely to stumble. We want our weight, we want the pull of gravity to go straight down through our body without hindrance. And then on the other side, transferring your weight. So first of all, transferring your weight. Nice fluid movement. Sometimes described as though our legs are filling up and emptying, filling up with the weight and emptying of the weight. And that's an interesting image. If you imagine getting two glasses and filling one up with water and then pouring the water from one glass to another, the glass that you're filling up will gradually get heavier. And in the same way, when we move our weight, say, into our front foot, or indeed the back, then actually, like the water pouring into the glass, the weight would drop down to the sole of the foot and then fill up the leg rather than sort of hanging around in the hip or something like that. So ideally, we get a strong sense of the weight dropping straight down. beginning to raise toes and heel. That's a very difficult process, one that's very key to Tai Chi and one that we're always working on. And again, if you go to say, drop your weight into your back foot and it doesn't quite get there, where is it stuck? What's stopping that? There's all sorts of things that you might do. Do you still have that sense of an upright alignment? Have you stiffened up in your knee or your back? And then stepping in. The foot goes down very definitely. We refer to it as planting the foot. When you plant something in your garden, it's a very conscious, intended act, not just random. And then this time, depending on where you've got space, either go forwards or backwards, but take a few steps through. And then back the other way. Now have your right foot forwards from the side. See how my hands drop down and my shoulders. I push my weight forward. Now if I was in water, my hands would be delayed. But when they swung through, they would do so very smoothly. It's the same thing going back. This is called fisherman cast the net. And when you go forwards and you settle in your front leg and the arms come through, again, just pay attention to the movement, to what's happening in your back and your sides. And see if you can feel which areas of your body are expanding at that point, which areas are contracting. It's quite often these very small movements, very small changes in our body that are going to be the most responsive to our ideas, our intention, our imagination. Now this time, as you go forwards and you feel the expansion pushing your arms through, turn slightly so that your hands now tend to swing forwards and backwards. Drop the weight back, let your hands drop down, turn, swinging your arms through the other way. And they naturally swing up. They're being sent forwards and backwards, but they're attached to your shoulders. This is an exercise called Wind Blows the Willows. Remember, the expansion in your body, the upward movement, comes from sinking down. So try not to do something like this, get to here and sort of come up. There's always a temptation to, if anything, we should go down more. The willow tree is an important image, important symbol in Tai Chi with its deep roots, but very strong, very supple wood. You say the willow tree will bend in the wind and then spring back. Good, and then bring the feet parallel. So try that on the other side. Start with your feet parallel, turning your right foot out, step forward with the left foot, starting in your back foot, and once again, fisherman casting there. Take time to settle into your back foot and just feel that wave-like movement flowing through your leg and your back, out through the front of your body, and finally into your arms. Like you're throwing a sheet over the bed. This time you go forward, settle into your front foot, and turn into wind blows the willows. We're told in Tai Chi that the movement is rooted in our feet, with this dropping of our center of gravity for stability, and to produce that sense of what is almost could be described as a bounce upwards. Whether or not your hips are coming up, which they don't in this exercise, still feel the rise in energy through your body. The movement is transmitted to the rest of your body through your legs, through the movement of your weight, directed by the turning in your center and expressed in your arms. Now, next time you go forwards, settling into the front foot, and again, let the back knee bend so you can bring this foot in and then take a step forwards or backwards, whichever way you've got the space, or to the side perhaps. Turn, bring the foot in. And if you're comfortable with this, and you don't have to sort of add this next stage on until you do feel comfortable, you can just bring your hands up. This is an exercise called Dragonfly Skims the Water. Key thing here is for your hips to drop back. So as your knee comes up, like a seesaw, the hips are dropping back. I'm going to do one more in this direction, and then I'm going to have to change direction, because otherwise I'll go crashing into the camera. So dragonfly skims the water. We remain stable through a combination of rooting down and stability, and we want our movements to reflect that, not to challenge that. Do one more in whichever direction you're going. Yeah. And with this exercise, if you do that in your own time, you might not have room to go forwards and backwards, but it's adaptable. You could go from side to side. Like this. Or you could even go maybe forwards one step. Here I'm going slightly on the diagonal here, and then back. And if you did it like this, you do it a few times on this side, and then you change over, do it a few times on the other side. So these exercises can be adapted. And bring your feet parallel. Excellent. So now, just rubbing your hands together and tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. down to one shoulder and your arm on the other side. And then with one hand or with both hands, gently on however much of your back you can get to comfortably. And around your hips, your legs. Light on your belly. And onto the upper part of the chest. The last exercise is called Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain. We come back to this feeling of being settled, of being spacious in mind and body, which isn't a permanent state by any means. First of all, you sink down. There's one stage of expansion and the rest, just feeling the pull of gravity on your hips. Somehow that seems to bring your hands around and in, and then downwards. And it's in that final downward movement that we once again just sort of push those extra thoughts gently to one side. We can deal with them later. It might help you to bring your breathing into the movement. If it does, then don't labor this, but you could try taking a breath in here and a sort of sighing breath, breathing out. So just for a moment, we come back to that nice, smooth, stable, centered, still quality, just for a few brief moments. But of course, in the process of doing that, we've once again loaded the legs. And in loading the legs, we create the potential for the outward movement. So these are not isolated states. The expanding yang movement is very much dependent on the contracting, sinking, yin movement. Just like in-breath and out-breath are two parts of the same process. One more time. And stand. Shake. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for joining in. As always, if you have any questions, do feel free to email. But for now, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.